What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to this week's installment on The Lake Show. Now, I really appreciate you guys tuning in last week. I finally had my first guest back on in what seems like an eternity ago. I mean, it's been quite a long time since I had someone else on. Shout out to my friend Paige Wasco. I appreciate you making the time to come on and talk about mental health and your pursuit and your passion of photography and content design and everything like that. I really appreciate that. And thank you again for making me a part of your day, everyone. And we got a lot to talk about today, especially when it comes to the NFL free agency period. And we'll talk a little bit about the NFL draft and a little bit going into the combine. But we're going to really talk about the NFL free agency that's been happening recently. And also, like I mentioned in previous episodes, I am a Bucked Up ambassador. So use promo code SHOW32 at buckedup.com. Get yourself 20% off your next purchase of pre-workout or any gym gear that you may want or need. So yeah, just head on over to buckedup.com and use promo code SHOW32. Get yourself 20% off. So the NFL draft is almost here. Comes up in about a month or so, and we're going to get a new wave of talent entering the NFL and hopefully, change the trajectory of a bunch of teams for the better. But obviously, when it comes to the NFL, it's hit and miss with a lot of talent. And that is true for especially the quarterback position. And a lot of teams, obviously, people have talked about before that, all it takes is one guy to completely change a franchise, which it does. But at the same time, there has to be a good culture there. There has to be, a good standing base to build off of. If you're a team like Chicago, obviously, I don't feel like it matters really who they draft number one overall. I don't care if it's Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, J.J. McCarthy, Michael Penix Jr., Bo Nix. It does not matter who Chicago drafts. I don't think any of those guys are set up for success if they get drafted to Chicago, simply because that team has been run specifically for the defensive side of the football for the better part of 40 years. The last time I remember the Bears having an above-average offense was with Jay Cutler a couple years ago. I shouldn't even say a couple years ago. It was more like back in 2010 when they went to the NFC Championship game and then got bounced by Aaron Rodgers and the Packers, who eventually went on to win Super Bowl 45 against Pittsburgh. But it doesn't really matter, honestly, in my opinion. It matters really what you have in place already. Now, for guys like Caleb Williams, who are considered can't-miss prospects, who are considered like no matter where they go, where they fall in the draft, where they're drafted, it doesn't matter where they end up. They're going to succeed to some degree. And I would be lying if I said I was not worried for Caleb Williams. I'm a big-time Caleb Williams fan. Obviously, I watched him all through his time at USC, even the early parts at Oklahoma. Caleb Williams tore it up. He's up. I would consider Caleb Williams, as far as can't-miss prospects go, John Elway was one years and years and years ago. Peyton Manning was one of those guys. Andrew Luck was one of those guys. Trevor Lawrence was considered one of those guys. But honestly, given his injury history recently, who knows if that's the case. And now Caleb Williams is the next guy up to be considered that can't-miss prospect. Well, in all reality, I would say I think Caleb Williams will succeed. I don't think that the Bears, I don't think they can possibly screw up a quarterback like Caleb Williams' caliber. Again, a 9-to-1 touchdown to turnover ratio in the last 2 years of college, that's really unheard of when it comes to a lot of college football players and a lot of college football quarterbacks throughout the entire country. You just don't see stat lines like that anymore. Obviously, there are plenty of quarterbacks out there who will put up monster stats and this and that, but at the same time, Caleb Williams, I feel like, is a difference maker when it comes to anybody who's wanting to draft him. I just worry for him that going to Chicago, I feel like Chicago is going to, in a way, if Caleb Williams was not as talented or as, really, as if he wasn't as talented as he really was, I would say there's 0% chance that he actually succeeds in Chicago. Obviously, we see it with Justin Fields right now. He's still on the team, but we have no clue what on earth Chicago is doing with Justin Fields. I honestly don't know why they're waiting so long to make a move, say whether they're keeping him or getting rid of him. But for all intents and purposes, Caleb Williams should be the first guy off the board. And we're going to move into a little bit of a, side subject when it comes to quarterback prospects for this year's NFL draft. Now, I've been one to say I think Caleb Williams is a can't-miss prospect. I think he's up there with guys like Trevor Lawrence and Andrew Luck. When it comes to the sheer talent that they, pose on the field, there's a very low chance of it not succeeding in a certain degree. But one thing after the NFL Combine that I've been seeing a lot of people talk about the fact that J.J. McCarthy, quarterback from Michigan, is shooting up his draft stock compared to a Michael Penix Jr. Wow. I personally think Penix is a way better quarterback than J.J. McCarthy. Here's the thing. I do not think J.J. McCarthy's play at quarterback, the way he played at Michigan, I don't necessarily think that translates to the NFL almost at all. He was basically given the keys to a Lamborghini and told not to crash. That's how good Michigan was. I mean, Michigan was a powerhouse pretty much the last 3 years of, J.J. McCarthy's tenure there. Michigan steamrolled over everyone. Obviously, they finally got over the hump and won a national championship with Jim Harbaugh, but for a long time, J.J. McCarthy was just basically told, here are the keys to the car, here's the keys to the Porsche, just don't crash it. And he didn't do that. He was a game manager who can move around and throw a nice football. I don't necessarily see the it factor when it comes to NFL quarterbacks, college quarterbacks transferring to the NFL. If you look at guys like beforehand, like Johnny Manziel years ago, I didn't necessarily think he was going to be that great. Mainly, obviously, because where you land matters, like I've already established, but also Johnny Manziel's style of football, running around and playing hero ball and just chucking it up to his receivers, yeah, you can get away with a lot of that in college, not in the pros. This whole run around, make plays sort of aspect, if you don't have the accuracy and the fortitude upstairs in the head to actually handle all that, especially at the next level when it comes to faster players and smarter players, you're talking about the elite of the elite when it comes to talented football players on the planet. I don't necessarily see J.J. McCarthy being one of those, it factor quarterbacks. Do I think he could be a franchise guy? Sure. I thought the same thing, though, unfortunately, about Desmond Ridder years ago. Well, he turned out to be a chump at Atlanta. So, unfortunately, that didn't really pan out quite like I expected it to. But the fact is, I think Michael Penix Jr. is a far more better thrower of the football, a far better athlete. Now, obviously, the injuries are concerns. The ACL injuries are a big-time concern for anybody who's getting drafted. It doesn't matter if you're a quarterback or a wide receiver. The injury history matters, and J.J. McCarthy has none of that. But I'll be honest, after watching J.J. McCarthy at the Combine, I can see why he would be shooting up people's draft boards. I really do. But I don't necessarily think his game translates to the NFL that much. It was a lot of field game management by J.J. McCarthy. At least the last year. In his last year, he really showed, he showed off the arm talent, the arm strength, the accuracy, and, the mental smarts of being a quarterback. But Michigan has been known as that power football team. We're going to run it at you. Try and stop us. Michigan has done that for the better part of every single year Jim Harbaugh was there, who's now at L.A. But I don't necessarily understand that's where I'm just confused about. I really don't understand. I feel like J.J. McCarthy is being overhyped right now. And according to ESPN.com, right now they have J.J. McCarthy ranked as the fourth best quarterback prospect, ahead of Michael Penix Jr., ahead of Bo Nix, ahead of Spencer Rattler, ahead of Joe Milton, Jordan Travis, Keaton Slovis. J.J. McCarthy is ranked 4. The only three above him, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, and Caleb Williams. I don't agree with this whatsoever, especially the Bo Nix one. Bo Nix has tenure. He has 61 starts in his college career. First of all, I feel like Bo Nix is easily, I think he's the second most NFL ready quarterback, specifically just because of how many years he played in college and how many games he has under his belt. It never hurts to have too much experience. It never hurts to have that many starts under your belt. I think that's the main reason that Kenny Pickett got drafted as high as he did, is because he played so many years at Pitt. And he's, obviously he was in the same building as Pittsburgh, but, he had tenure. He had a lot of time to play. He had a lot of starts under his belt. And the same holds true for Bo Nix. But I think Bo Nix, absolute gunslinger of the football. He was known as Bo Picks back in the day, his freshman to sophomore year, at Auburn and Oregon. He was known as Bo Picks just because he was reckless and threw a lot of interceptions. But ever since the time at Auburn, since he went to Oregon, he's been a lights-out quarterback. Obviously, the only team that really stood in the way of Oregon's college football playoff hopes was Michael Penix Jr. in Washington, and they did beat them. But as far as J.J. McCarthy's draft stock, I would love to see him succeed. I just don't understand the hype. I feel like he's being overhyped in a way, above guys like Bo Nix and Michael Penix Jr. But, eventually we're going to see how well he performs and what team is willing to take him in the first round. I'm sure we'll be bitching about it real soon and really contemplating, can this guy translate his game to the NFL? And, we'll just have to wait and see. But my hunch says that J.J. McCarthy is not going to translate to your prototypical NFL quarterback that you would like to have on your franchise. Okay, so we're going to transition into the NFL free agency period. I've always loved this time of year. I love seeing who's going to make a splash, who's going to a different team, who's going to make the next team the next big leap in their career, who's going to make the team better in order to pursue the ultimate prize in the NFL, which is the Super Bowl. So I got a bunch of notable free agent signings, and it's actually kind of crazy of some of the things that have went on. So some of the notable free agents that have already signed with new teams, and some have stayed put. So some of the most notable ones, and we're going to talk about a couple of them in depth. Russell Wilson leaving Denver and is finally at Pittsburgh. We have Mac Jones from New England going to the Jacksonville Jaguars for a 6th-round pick. Tony Pollard to Tennessee. Kirk Cousins going to the Atlanta Falcons. Nobody saw that coming. Josh Jacobs from the Raiders straight into the Packer Nation. DeAndre Swift leaving Philadelphia and going to Chicago. And Baker Mayfield signed a 3-year deal for $100 million to stay in Tampa Bay. He deserved it. And Jerry Jeudy to Cleveland for a 5th and 6th round pick. That's a fantastic pickup for Cleveland. And then Saquon Barkley staying in division, leaving the Giants and going to the Philadelphia Eagles. So those are some of the most notable free agent signings. And some of them happened yesterday and some of them have been, in the works. And there will still be more that are going to happen and be made in the works. So we're going to talk about the biggest one, in my opinion, so far up to this point. Russell Wilson to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now I know what you're going to say. Everybody in Pittsburgh, I know a lot of friends of mine who are Steeler fans who were hammering to get Justin Fields from Chicago. And here's my whole thing on that. I'm not happy about it, but I'm not mad about it. But if I had to pick a side, I'd be more happy about having Russell Wilson in Pittsburgh than angry about it. Here's the thing. Russell Wilson, last year, Russell Wilson finished 9th in passing touchdowns. You know who he had more touchdown passes than? Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, C.J. Stroud, Justin Herbert, and Kirk Cousins. Those are just some of the most notable names that Russell Wilson had more passing touchdowns than. He finished 8th in passer rating. That's better than Jared Goff, Jordan Love, Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, and Baker Mayfield. And completion percentage, very important trait for a quarterback. He finished 12th, around middle of the pack, but that was still better than Trevor Lawrence, Jalen Hurts, Justin Herbert, Jordan Love, Baker Mayfield, and CJ Stroud. So the notion that Russell Wilson is a bad quarterback, I spit on the idea that anyone wants to continue to say he's a bad quarterback. He's not a bad quarterback. Is he what he was when he won a Super Bowl with the Seahawks? No, not by a long shot. But I think there's deeper meaning behind why Russell Wilson is not that anymore. But the fact of the matter is, Russell Wilson basically was a mid to high level quarterback in the year 2023. Sean Payton was brought in to right the ship. He got every ounce of talent out of Russell Wilson. And my big thing was, I feel like Nathaniel Hackett ruined Russell Wilson in a way. I don't think Nathaniel Hackett had any business being a head coach. And here's the thing. Russell Wilson was expected to come into Denver and be the savior. He was expected to lead Denver back to the promised land, like when they signed Peyton Manning all those years ago, nearly over a decade ago. Obviously, Peyton Manning produced the Super Bowl, but that was basically riding Von Miller's coattails. But either way, Peyton Manning brought a Super Bowl to Denver. But the notion that Russell Wilson was to come in and then be the savior, I had no hope for that whatsoever. I should take that back. Part of me thought this could have been a Matthew Stafford move, like a Matthew Stafford to LA kind of move. But you also have to take in fact that there was Cooper Kupp there already. There was great weapons there already, a stout defense in LA, and they had Sean McVay, who is easily probably one of the top 2 offensive minds in all of the NFL, especially when it comes to head coaches. So Matthew Stafford already had a great landing spot to go to, a great culture, a great coach, a great defense, and great weapons. Matthew Stafford had it all set up, and he was the missing piece for the Rams to finally get over the hump, to finally win a Super Bowl. And now, when you take in the Russell Wilson consideration, him going to Denver, 1, expected to be the savior. 2, the amount of money they gave him handicapped the entire team, basically. I didn't agree with the contract whatsoever when Russell Wilson went to Denver, because you handicap your franchise. Like I said, you're not able to afford all those great defensive players. I've said this about the Dallas Cowboys, and I've said this about plenty of other teams. When you give the bag to the quarterback, you kneecap your entire franchise, because you can't afford all those great defensive players. You can't afford all those offensive weapons. You can't afford to keep everybody when you're paying so much money for a quarterback. So that's the second part. They paid him too much money, and it handicapped the franchise. And now Denver is in a sticky situation where they're stuck with it. They are still stuck with the contract for Russell Wilson. And this is why it's a good thing for Pittsburgh. Here's why I feel this is the smartest move Pittsburgh could have made. Pittsburgh's offense has been absolutely abysmal the past 3 years, especially the last year with Big Ben. I heard a stat earlier yesterday that Pittsburgh has had 25 passing touchdowns in the past 2 years in the NFL. Yeah, Russell Wilson had 26 last year in 2023 alone. You realize how abysmal that is as a Pittsburgh fan to admit the fact that our offense is just inept. It's absolutely pitiful. It's absolutely garbage. It's horrible. So, 1, you get a quarterback who's won a Super Bowl. Maybe he's not the Super Bowl caliber quarterback that he was, but he's a leader. He's respected in the locker room. He's a grown-up, handles pressure really well, and he's a great mentor. He's a great locker room guy. Guys love him. Obviously, he had issues in Seattle and in Denver, but that was there's a bunch of other factors that went into that, but there's no high expectations for Russell Wilson. He is not expected to make us an instant Super Bowl contender, but he brings efficiency, he brings leadership, he brings camaraderie, This guy, Russell Wilson, is a leader. Plus, here's the added benefit of it. You know who's paying the majority of the contract? Denver. Denver is paying $38 million of Russell Wilson's contract this upcoming season, and he's not even playing for the damn Broncos anymore. Pittsburgh is paying this man $1.2 million, if I'm correct. Yes, I believe it's $1.2 million of the $39 that he's making this year. So Denver is flipping the bill pretty much for Russell Wilson to play in Pittsburgh, which is, in a sense, cheaper than what we would have got if we had to if we traded for Justin Fields, because we'd be paying more for Justin Fields' services. So why not go with a veteran quarterback who brings in that veteran leadership, is a leader, has so much experience. And while he's not what he used to be before, he's still a solid quarterback. Like I said, middle of the pack, higher pack of the NFL. And what better way for Kenny Pickett to possibly turn out better than by learning behind Russell Wilson? I'm sorry, Kenny Pickett learning behind Mitchell Trubisky was not the way to do it. I don't think that was a smart decision at all, and I don't think any NFL executive, I don't think anybody who talks sports for a living thought it was a good thing that Kenny Pickett learned behind Mitch Trubisky. But here's the downside of Kenny Pickett still. Mason Rudolph played his ass off at the end of the year last year. Mason Rudolph played better than Kenny Pickett did when he was healthy. So, like I said before plenty times, I was rooting for Kenny. I really was. I really hope that sitting behind Russell Wilson for a year will do him some good. I hope he'll learn a little bit more than he would have, under Mitch Trubisky. But I just sold my stock on Kenny Pickett, honestly. I don't expect Russell Wilson to come in and make us a Super Bowl contender instantly. But this roster is definitely set up for something. It's definitely set up to be better than what it was. There is no conceivable reason why Pittsburgh, in the state that it's in now, can immediately add more talent to that already loaded roster. If you think about it, Pittsburgh wins no matter what. That's just the Tomlin way. They have been winning no matter what. It doesn't matter how good the offense is, how bad the offense is, how good the defense is, or how bad the defense is. It does not matter. Pittsburgh wins. They may not win Super Bowls, but they still win. And winning matters in the NFL, of course. So the fact of the matter is, Pittsburgh's getting a veteran quarterback, one who's mature, one who can lead men, one who can galvanize the troops, one who can bring camaraderie into a locker room, and there's no added pressure for it. This is a one-year deal, and we're basically paying him pennies on the dollar. Like I said, Denver's flipping the bill for us pretty much, so why wouldn't you take Russell Wilson? I think this was the smartest move Pittsburgh could have made right now. I understand why a lot of Steeler fans wanted Justin Fields, and part of me, honestly, I really did want Justin Fields, but now that I look back on it, we're basically not paying Russell Wilson anything, so why not roll with it? I think Pittsburgh made a smart decision. I don't necessarily think they're going to be Super Bowl contenders next year, but I definitely think Russell Wilson being in the locker room and Russell Wilson having the keys to the offense is definitely going to take Pittsburgh in a more straightforward direction rather than all over the place when it comes to the play from Mitch Trubisky, who is now in Buffalo again, Mason Rudolph, or Kenny Pickett. I think Russell Wilson was the best option out there for Pittsburgh, so I'm happy. I'm personally happy with the signing. So now we're going to move on to Kirk Cousins. Signed a 4-year deal with the Atlanta Falcons. I personally did not see this coming. I honestly had absolutely no clue where Kirk Cousins was going to land. Now, I've been a big, I've really scrutinized Kirk Cousins a lot, especially just because he has choked in so many big games over the past couple years. He really has, but he's still a talented quarterback. He's a veteran. He knows how the game works. He's efficient sometimes, not necessarily in the big games that you want him to be. but he's definitely a solid quarterback. I would love him to have him on in Pittsburgh. Obviously, we have Russell Wilson, but I would have took Kirk Cousins too. And here's why it's a good fit in Atlanta. Obviously, Kirk Cousins is coming off a major surgery, so that's worrisome. But the Falcons have a great offensive line. So he's going to be protected. He's going to stay healthy. I'm more than certain that he will play this entire year. He's got young, great weapons in Atlanta and a solid defense, middle of the pack to upper, tier of a defense in the NFL. It's kind of crazy that, this all played out the way it did. Kirk Cousins now has a great offensive line, at least according to Pro Football Focus, a decent offensive line, so he'll get protection. Drake London at wide receiver, Kyle Pitts at tight end, hopefully they finally use him, and Bijan Robinson at running back, and a stellar defense. Kirk Cousins, I feel like, can definitely, be the best quarterback in this division. This is easily the worst division in football, and it's it's the worst by a country mile. You have the Falcons, you have the Saints, you have the Panthers, and you have the Buccaneers. Kirk Cousins is easily the best quarterback in that division. And 9 times out of 10, we have seen over the past couple years, if you have the best quarterback in your division, odds are you're going to win the division and go to the playoffs with a chance to play for the Super Bowl. So I think this was one of the smartest moves Atlanta could have made. Their quarterback situation has been abysmal since Matt Ryan left, since they got rid of him, and since, obviously they have never been the same since the Super Bowl against New England, but I'm not going to beat a dead horse. But Kirk Cousins to Atlanta makes a lot of sense, specifically because he is a solid quarterback. He's a B+ to A- tier quarterback, I feel. And he is easily the best quarterback in the whole entire division now. You got Bryce Young, who I feel bad for. He has absolutely nothing to work with in Carolina. Baker Mayfield, I feel like, is the second best quarterback now in that division. But we'll talk a little bit more about Baker in a little bit. So, Baker Mayfield. The Saints, Derek Carr. Derek Carr is washed. He absolutely stinks. But it's just the fact that Kirk Cousins will easily now be the best quarterback in the entire division. And I don't think it's necessarily that close, except Baker Mayfield. So I think it's going to come down to Atlanta and Tampa Bay, obviously, for the division next year. And depending on how the offense looks at the start of the season, obviously things could change. But honestly, Atlanta could be primed for a great year. They really could. I think this was a great move for Atlanta. I was very pleasantly surprised that they did not elect to trade for Justin Fields. I do not know what the story is with Justin Fields right now, so we're going to transfer into that. What is the future for Justin Fields? I honestly couldn't tell you. I thought it was either Pittsburgh or Atlanta, surefire candidates for landing Justin Fields. But I don't understand, and I don't think that's necessarily a problem on Justin Fields' part. Justin Fields deserves another shot. I really, truly believe that. He deserves another shot as a starter in the NFL because the Bears have butchered players for years and years on end. The best quarterback that the Bears have had the past 10 years is Mitch Trubisky because he actually got them to the playoffs. And they may have lost, but he still got them to the playoffs. And the last quarterback to get them to an NFC championship game was Jay Cutler, who notoriously we called no good as a quarterback. So I don't know what the Bears are thinking. If you want to draft Caleb Williams, why are you not getting Justin Fields out of the building immediately? I don't understand that. So I don't necessarily know where Justin Fields would land in the NFL right now. The only teams that I can really foresee needing him or actually trying to make a play for him, Washington, Sam Howell, he stinks. He's no good. I looked up a stat that Sam Howell had 21 interceptions in 2023. That's absolutely pathetic. New England, they need a quarterback because They just shipped Mac Jones to Jacksonville for a 6th-round pick. So obviously the Mac Jones era in New England is finally closed and done and over with. The New York Giants, they're rolling with Daniel Jones. Tennessee, they need a quarterback. The Jets, maybe sitting behind Aaron Rodgers. I can see the Jets doing that, but they have Zach Wilson trying to learn behind Aaron Rodgers. Minnesota, now that Kirk Cousins is gone, I can see Minnesota being a landing spot for Justin Fields. Indianapolis has their guy in Anthony Richardson. I can see him going to Seattle and dueling it out with Geno Smith. I think Geno Smith, he's an okay quarterback. He's nothing spectacular. He had a great comeback year that 1 year, 2 years ago, but now I think it's definitely possible that, Justin Fields could land in Seattle, or he can land with the Raiders. The Raiders are in desperate need of a quarterback too. So when it comes to the future of Justin Fields, in a way, he dug his own grave based off of his terrible play on the field. But the main problem with it, I think, is Chicago. Here's how you can tell who was really responsible for everything going to shit in Chicago. Was it the Bears organization or was it Justin Fields? I think depending on where Justin Fields lands for his next team, by Thanksgiving of this upcoming year, we will know who was in the wrong. We will know who was the biggest issue. Was it the Bears in the front office and the entire coaching staff that let him down? Or was it Justin Fields letting Justin Fields down? Now, I feel both of them played a massive, massive part in the downfall of that entire, the past 2 seasons. But my hunch tells me that the main reason it didn't work out is because of Chicago itself, because of the Bears front office, because of the Bears coaching staff. Like I said in previous episodes, the Bears have been a shit show franchise for 10 plus years, but it's also because they constantly focus on the defensive side. The Bears defense is usually never an issue. A couple years here and there, yeah, they'll have some stinkers, but usually the Bears have a solid defense. Their offense is usually always bottom 6 in the league. Their offense is absolutely putrid the last couple years, especially. They just can't put points up on the board. They don't have consistency at quarterback. They don't have consistency of players staying healthy on the offensive side. And the coaching staff hires are nothing short of disastrous, which is why I'm a big proponent of hiring offensive players, coaches to be head coaches nowadays, because it's an offensive league. It's a quarterback and head coach kind of league. That's why I know Jim Harbaugh and Justin Herbert for the Chargers is going to work out well because of that offensive system that they got. Defensive coaches can succeed in the NFL as long as you have the right offensive coordinator that can guide the offense in a productive direction. We see that with Ben Johnson and Dan Campbell in Detroit. Dan Campbell is more of a defensive guy, honestly. He really is. But he hired Ben Johnson, and Ben Johnson has turned Jared Goff, honestly, in my opinion, into a top 10 quarterback in the entire league. You got DeMeco Ryans, who's the head coach at Houston, defensive guy. Well, he had a great offensive coordinator for C.J. Stroud, who took him to new heights. See, defensive coaches can work in the NFL as long as they have the right offensive coordinator to right the offensive ship. So, honestly, when it comes to the Justin Fields case, we will know by Thanksgiving of this year. I feel like that's a good indicator of whether or not a quarterback will be successful in the NFL with their given team, at least in that current point. You give until Thanksgiving to see, obviously the playoff implications are high towards Thanksgiving, and you really see who can actually play ball and who's legitimate contenders and who's pretenders. So the Bears have been that for the better part of 15 years. Like I said, the last time the Bears were a true threat to win a Super Bowl was 2010. That was when Brian Urlacher was playing. That was when Devin Hester was still there. Hall of Famer Devin Hester. Hall of Famer Brian Urlacher. Let's see, Lance Briggs was on the defense. They had Jay Cutler. They had Johnny Knox. They had Matt Forte at running back. They had a young Greg Olson. See, that was the time. That was the last time the Bears were actually legitimate Super Bowl contenders, in my opinion. But it just never panned out, unfortunately. I've always had a soft spot for the Bears franchise, but they've just been run so poorly into the ground because they're so hell-bent on being defensive driven. It is not 1985 anymore. The 85 Bears will go down as one of probably the 3 greatest teams in NFL history. But that was 40 years ago. You got to live in the present now. I get holding on to the past sometimes, but do it in a healthy reason. Like, look to the past to build a better future. Don't look at the past to stay in the past. The Bears have constantly done that, and it's absolutely mind-boggling that they continue to do that. So it's neither here nor there. I guess that's why I'm not an NFL executive. I 100% feel like I could run the Bears franchise way better than the Bears do it right now. So eventually we're going to see where Justin Fields lands, but I couldn't honestly tell you where or when he's going to land somewhere. So we got 2 more things we're going to discuss today. Baker Mayfield is staying in Tampa Bay after signing a 3-year, $100 million contract, 50 to 60 of that fully guaranteed. I couldn't be more happy for Baker. And I say, and this is going to be a hot take, he deserves every penny of that contract. Maturity went a long way for Baker Mayfield. Nobody expected him to do well at all going to Tampa Bay. Nobody expected him to succeed the way that Tampa Bay succeeded. Going into making the wild card and then beating the Philadelphia Eagles, the reigning NFC champions, that was just unheard of. Nobody thought whatsoever that Baker Mayfield at the beginning of the season was going to do that. I told everyone that Baker was going to beat the Eagles in the playoffs. Just as the way the season progressed and everything like that, Philadelphia lost their identity. Ever since Shane Steichen left, that team has not been the same whatsoever, even though I feel like they'll be a little bit revamped and ready. They'll still be a threat in the NFC. But I feel like the Buccaneers made the right decision on keeping Baker Mayfield there because there's no high expectations. Baker Mayfield, when he left Cleveland, obviously had a little stint in Carolina, but yet again, like I said, Carolina ruins everybody. They're ruining Bryce Young as we speak. So, I didn't expect him to do anything when he went there. And then going to LA, landing in LA on a Wednesday and then playing a Thursday night game and showing out against the Raiders. Tip of the cap, I was so happy for Baker Mayfield, and that was the moment I knew that he earned another contract with another team. I knew for a fact that he was going to get hired by some team. I knew for a fact that that was going to happen. And now, obviously, they had Matt Stafford coming back, so there was no need to keep him for the amount of money that he was going to get. So Tampa Bay brings him in. Well, there was no Super Bowl aspirations. When he came to Cleveland as a number 1 overall pick, he's expected to be the savior of Cleveland. He was expected to bring Super Bowl championships to Cleveland. That's really the hope everybody has for their number 1 overall pick, especially if it's a quarterback, because that's the guy who has to right the ship and guide you to the promised land. But Baker Mayfield wasn't ready for that. And he was immature at the beginning, like Johnny Manziel was for all of his career. By the way, Johnny Manziel might make a comeback to the NFL. I would love to see that, especially that documentary with him and Shannon Sharp. I would check that out if you didn't watch it. You'll learn a lot of great life lessons from that. But, one, Baker Mayfield, he had no Super Bowl expectations placed on his shoulder when he came to Tampa Bay. Nobody in Tampa Bay expected him to do fantastic, but he did. Not fantastic, but he did damn good. I mean, clearly good enough to win himself another contract, and a big one at that. I think Tampa Bay made the right decision, especially keeping Mike Evans. Mike Evans has been the most consistent receiver I can think of in the past 20 years for NFL wide receivers. This man has had over 1,000 yards every single year he's been in the league, and I think he's going into his 8th or 9th year. He's had 1,000 yards every single year. Definition of consistency right there. Mike Evans is one of the most underappreciated wide receivers in the whole entire game. Obviously, we talk about guys like DK Metcalf, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, all those guys, and Cooper Kupp. Guess what? He should be considered up there with those guys. He's just been that good for that long. And I think keeping him with Baker Mayfield, that does wonders for Tampa. I think it'll be Tampa Bay and Atlanta battling out for the division. Obviously, I feel like that division will be good enough to where two teams will represent them in the playoffs. So I think it's quite entirely possible that we could see the Falcons and the Buccaneers enter the playoffs. But, hats off to Baker Mayfield. He played very, very well last year, and I would say he did earn himself another contract. Now, me personally, I don't think I would have given him $100 million. I would have said like a $75 to $80 million, but that's neither here nor there. I feel like that was a great hire. That was a great keep by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I think they'll be primed and ready to, make another run. I will talk about an underrated signing. I told everybody a while ago that Cleveland football is on the rise, and it's still continuously on the rise. Other than the quarterback situation, we all know the story with Watson, and everybody knows my opinion on him too. But Jerry Jeudy going to Cleveland for a 5th and 6th round pick, I think that's an absolute steal. So whoever the quarterback is for Cleveland in this upcoming year, you have Amari Cooper, now Jerry Jeudy, pairing him with David Njoku, a fantastic offensive line, Nick Chubb coming back, Jerome Ford, obviously a stellar defense, and Myles Garrett. Cleveland is going to be very dangerous next year. You watch. Cleveland's going to be competing for the number 1 spot in the AFC North. And then another one I wanted to talk about was Saquon Barkley to the Eagles. I never thought I'd say those words ever in my life, but releasing DeAndre Swift, I didn't like that, but at the same time, I didn't know who the Eagles would get to replace that. I'm very surprised that the Giants let him go. I don't know who the Giants think they are right now. I don't know what their game plan is. They're still running it with Daniel Jones. They have below average receivers, a below average offensive line. Now they got rid of their best offensive weapon by a landslide. I don't know where you go if you're the Giants. I don't know what you plan on doing. They have the 6th overall pick this year in the draft. You better pray that Marvin Harrison Jr. falls to you guys. You better pray that it happens. Otherwise, you're just going to be absolutely abysmal the entire year. The Giants have nobody of note that can really propel them forward. They have an okay defense. It's okay. But the receivers, below average. Run game now, below average. And offensive line, putrid. And Daniel Jones at quarterback. Giants made a big mistake letting Saquon go. Because I don't know who your offensive production, I don't know where the offensive production is going to come from. Now, shifting over to Philadelphia, I don't necessarily think that they're going to be a fantastic team. I think they'll still compete in the NFC just because Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, the offensive line will still be good, but obviously it will never be the same now that Jason Kelce has retired. Oh, man, that has to hurt Philly. But I feel like Saquon Barkley is going to thrive in Philly. They've always had good offensive lines. They're still going to have a good O-line. Obviously, losing probably the best center in the past 40 years in the NFL won't help. But Philadelphia will bounce back. They still have a fantastic roster. They have to shore up the defensive line. They have to find an offensive coordinator that can propel Jalen Hurts like Shane Steichen was doing. I just don't know how that's going to end up. But I definitely feel like Saquon Barkley to the Eagles will be a big factor going forward. And I feel like Barkley will again return to his rookie year to second year form. And I feel like he's going to lead the league in rushing next year. That's my hot take. Saquon Barkley is going to lead the NFL in rushing yards next year. And now we're going to move on to our final subject, and it's going to be college football. But obviously I'm biased for the Miami Hurricanes, so I'm going to talk just a little bit about Miami. So they finally got their quarterback, Cam Ward, transferred from Houston, absolute baller and a game changer. Especially with the 12-team playoff, this has to be the year that Miami competes for the ACC championship again. Like I've said in previous years, and I've said it like a broken record, the ACC is wide open. Florida State, Jordan Travis, gone. Keon Coleman, gone. Jared Verse, gone. Offensive line for basically the whole O-line for Florida State, gone. NFL draft, all of them, NFL draft. Obviously, they got DJ Ungalale from Clemson, the Clemson transfer. Well, Oregon State transfer, and now to Florida State, DJ Ungalale. So he's pretty good, but he's not, I don't think he's as good as Jordan Travis. So I don't know who the receivers are going to be if I'm Florida State. I don't know what to make of the offensive line or the weapons or the defense. They had a lot of talent leave that program for the NFL draft this year. Clemson, Dabo Swinney is on a downfall with Clemson. Obviously, they had an okay season, 8-5, I believe, but that's not the Dabo Swinney standard. That's not the Clemson standard that we've been used to with guys like Trevor Lawrence at quarterback for him. So Clemson is hit and miss. Is Cade Klubnik the guy? He's okay. He's hit and miss. He has some growing pains to go through. I think Cade Klubnik could be something, but, that's up in the air. North Carolina, they're going to take a step back, losing Drake May to the draft. Louisville, they bring people back, but they weren't necessarily a real huge threat when it came to, the ACC championship. Obviously, they almost beat Florida State in the ACC championship, but that's just because Jordan Travis got hurt and could not play. If Jordan Travis played in the ACC championship, Florida State probably wins by 30. That's my personal opinion. So Louisville brings people back, but they're hit and miss. So if there is any year that Miami is finally going to get over the hump and compete in the ACC, it has to be this year. I think Cam Ward is easily the best quarterback in the entire ACC, one of the best quarterbacks in the nation, has Heisman potential, said by not just me, not just because I'm a Miami fan, but plenty of people who have reported college football and talk college football see the potential that Cam Ward has for going to the U. And if, in my personal unbiased opinion, I feel like Miami, not saying they will, they have the opportunity to compete for and win the ACC and get one of the 12 spots when it comes to the college football playoff. I think it all rides on the consistency of coaching. Obviously, health is always a factor, but this has to be the year. They got a great defense, young talent coming in from their number 3 draft class in the nation. This has got to be the year. If Miami doesn't get over the hump a little bit this year, I honestly don't know when they will do it. But with Cam Ward going to Miami, instantly puts them, I feel, in the driver's seat to control their own destiny in the ACC. And that's going to wrap it up, ladies and gentlemen, on this week's installment of The Lake Show. Be sure to like, subscribe, share with your friends, leave some comments down below. I'm your host, Dominic Lako. God bless.
I love the chase and the hunt, and I set the pace when I'm running. I always take what I want and I always give it 100. Don't need a bank, no, I'm funded. Play the game like it's nothing. I'm always thankful for something. Don't take for granted, stay humble. Now wake up! It's time to look at the enemy. Look in the mirror if he is no friend to me. It's not working out, maybe it's the